Welcome everyone to our panel discussion on sustainable economic models within this EU-CONEXUS framework. As you know, EU-CONEXUS brings together coastal universities to address these unique challenges faced by coastal regions, different challenges in the context of climate change and basically focusing on sustainability. As you know, and another moderator said yesterday, coastal cities are especially attractive for their beauty and prosperity, and also for the facility for logistic activities. But this is also a peril that could seriously difficult their sustainability. It is an unstable equilibrium, not only from the use and abuse of natural resources, but also from economic dynamics and especially their social implications. We are a community living together, facing the environment and focusing into the future. But as almost all the researchers know, sustainability is essentially a probabilistic issue. We don't have all the required data to decide, and we are absolutely not certain about the true model that governs the future. It is for this that we must guess about, one, the proper use of resources of different natures, natural resources with different degrees of reproducibility, capital investments, embedding different technologies, research and development activities, human capital, and so on. But also, and it is even more important, that we must be aware of the reason, the objective, the reason we manage resources. Social welfare. What is social welfare? Social welfare cannot be only defined at the individual level, but often also as a common or even relational good, as Professor Samagni will argue in the final lecture. As you probably know, essentially, sustainable economic models shift from a linear approach to focus on economic prosperity. But these models involve systemic changes. And systemic changes require choices, investment, public or private, policies, innovation to move away from GDP-focused growth towards a more resilient and equitable future. Sometimes creativity is destructive, as Schumpeter and recently Agion Howitt, Nobel Prizes 1 week ago or a few weeks ago, in 1992 explained, one must take into account social interactions and time preferences when designing to boost growth and welfare. In this panel, we aim to explore different perspectives on sustainable economic models and the implications for coastal communities that, together with attractive, as I said, are particularly vulnerable to economic dynamics. We have four distinguished, important specialists. Professor Helen Hughes has been teaching in Southeast Technological University in the areas of inorganic chemistry, good laboratory practice, and quality management, including lean manufacturing. It's only a brief synthesis. And her presentation will focus on circular economy and the challenge of a sustainable economy. She will highlight main challenges, but also potential obstacles and perils associated with it. Then Juan Requena, he is the practitioner, the manager, He is Director of Innovation and Venture in Kilometer Zero, Food Innovation Hub, an initiative of Familia Martinez Group. He will bring his experience in Kilometer Zero as one of the transformers of the food industry. They have aligned their initiative to the challenges, showing us they consider possible to transform threats into opportunities for the economic sustainability of their project. Well, our third panelist, Professor Pierre Labardine, he is a researcher and also professor in management sciences, and also director of IAE at La Rochelle University. He's also co-responsible of the Master in Tourism. He will add a long-term vision perspective focusing on the scalability of economic models to be sustainable. Sometimes some initiatives seem to be sustainable but cannot be escalated, suggesting new management tools that could be eventually aligned with the goal of sustainability. And finally, we have an online panelist. Finally, he had a technical problem to attend physically this session, but he will connect online. He is Professor Pablo Fernandez, researcher at Ingenio. Ingenio is an initiative of SIC UPV, Polytechnic University of Valencia. He is expert in transitions, governance, and especially trade-offs, a very important issue when facing realities around socio-ecologic systems. And also, he says, the study of the common goods. He will focus today on the importance of soil health. Oh, soil is an important asset, and the different dimensions, not only for housing market, also for agriculture, and also for social health. Our vice rector, that is Jose Maria Tormo, he's also a specialist in brain health, and I guess that soil is also important for a lot of dimensions related to the establishment of societies, individuals forming societies in coastal locations. He will focus on soil health, I said, not only as a main driver of productivity, but also as a crucial element for society's engagement. So it's a privilege to have this panelist today. And well, I give the floor to Professor Hughes. She will start with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks to Johan for the kind introduction and to the EU-CONEXUS for the invitation to talk to you today. So I'm going to talk about the circular economy. So this is a well-known diagram here from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and all this is doing is just showing you that the circular economy isn't a simple aspect, that there's two parts to it, the part that is result with finite materials and the parts that can have renewables. Finite materials, things like reuse, recycle, refurbishment, and then in the renewables, things like anaerobic digestion, biogas, regeneration. Okay, so again, all it's telling you is that the circular economy is a quite complex area. There are many benefits to looking at the circular economy as an economic model, from environmental benefits, economic benefits, and social benefits. So just to state very simply what these are, in terms of the environmental benefits, the obvious ones are things like waste reduction. If you're reusing and repairing things, you're reducing the amount of waste that you produce. This leads to resource conservation in terms of finite resources, because again, we're reusing that material, which should result in lower carbon emissions. And as we all know, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a priority for Europe and the world currently. Also helps us to get our SDGs and deliver those. In terms of economic benefits, there's things like cost savings as a result of minimizing your resource inputs, job creation in the new innovative ideas that occur as a result of the circular bioeconomy, and then the innovation and the leading to new markets, which is what we all hope will result out of it. But there's also social benefits that sometimes people aren't that clear on. Things like community resilience by promoting sustainability practices and reducing your dependencies on finite resources that can support local economies. It also requires a big cultural shift towards sustainable consumption and production patterns. And we'll come back to that idea again later on. So there are challenges associated with the circular economy, which most people realise. And one of the main challenges is that it requires high initial investment costs. Okay? If you're looking at your waste, reducing that waste and coming up with ideas as to how you can use it, then there will be initial investment costs. However, this has the knock-on effect of reducing resource dependency, especially in areas where resources are finite and maybe resources are hard to come by. A second challenge is in the redesign of the products and supply chain. And in theory, this is the most important bit, that you design it and redesign it so that you're not producing the waste in the first place. Okay? However, that's too big of a challenge for most industries to face. Okay? However, as a result of accepting this challenge, you could have improved brand reputation, stakeholder trust, and as people become more environmentally aware and environmentally conscious, it's up to consumers to demand these sort of materials. Second, or a third challenge is the difficulty in measuring your multi-dimensional value. So, how do you measure that, and how do you realize that, and how do you tell your stakeholders or your customers that it has value? As regulations change, and again, one of the points that we'll make later on is that policy needs to change to support the circular economy, then compliance with emerging regulations will result, and therefore you are meeting those compliance. The need for cross-sectoral collaboration and innovation is key, and perhaps EU-CONEXUS can deliver some of that innovation and cross-collaboration in order to come up with these new ideas and new concepts. And this leads to access to new markets and business models, which is essential for the circular economy. So just a small example from SETU. An industry approached us from the shellfish processing industry with a problem that they had a lot of waste shells. Okay, and they were looking for an application, a circular bioeconomy application from the waste shells. So we took their waste shells, and we've been working with those for a while, and we found that when you treat them, they have very good antimicrobial properties, broad spectrum, gram-positive and gram-negative. And we have applied them in wastewater treatment, and they're exceedingly good at phosphate removal and nitrate removal from waste streams. They can be used in areas like bioplastics, for sustainable green chemical catalysis, as antioxidants, and perhaps in bone engineering. So there's a lot of applications from what is ultimately a waste material that people started looking at because they could no longer allow dump it into the sea. So again, another project in SETU where we looked at how we could add high value from products from marine waste. And in this, we engaged with fish producers and processors to identify and quantify the major marine waste that occurred in the southeast of Ireland, where our university is based. We evaluated extraction methods, scientific and patent literature for potential high-value pharmaceutical uses or applications, and feed that into the ongoing and future research from the circular bioeconomy, based upon research that's carried out on what is there in the southeast of Ireland. So, how do we overcome these key barriers? Well, partnerships are key, and to come up with novel, innovative ideas, you require the building of cross-sectorial innovation platforms. So we need innovation, we need people to think outside the box, but isn't that true of all science? And we need people to form these partnerships to come up with new ideas. There is ecological responsibilities in terms of ecosystem preservation and restoration, and that has to become central objectives to a lot of what we do in research and also what people do in industry. We need regenerative business practices that enhance biodiversity, strengthen climate resilience and foster social inclusion. And we cannot ever underestimate the idea of the social inclusion aspect of these research in order to have real impact going forward in terms of what we do and what we produce. The triple line bottom effects are ecological, social and economic. Okay? And the circular bioeconomy can certainly add to these three bottom lines and give ecological, social and economical advantages. Where's next beyond circular thinking? Maybe a nature positive economy where nature becomes central to production and central to the economy. An example of this might be agroforestry, for example. So, some thoughts in terms of the circular economy. Are we promoting solutions acceptable to the ones that created the issues in the first place? So, in other words, are we coming up with a solution to waste that's produced by people in industry in the first place? Should we think about a concept of redesign? How expensive is redesign? Is it an option at all? Okay, I don't know the answer to these questions, but I'm just putting them forward for thought. There are lovely successful stories out there in terms of what can be done, and these are just a few of them I just picked by random because I kind of liked them. The first one is Loop in the USA, which is refillable packaging system. So you can see that in terms of things like your washing powder, for example. You can bring it along and get it refilled as opposed to producing new packaging. Fair-phoned repairable electronics rather than what we currently have, which is just throw them out, okay, and get a new one. Biobean, which is a nice idea of using coffee waste, of which there is quite a large quantity, and converting that into biofuel. Veolia water reuse, which was industrial water recycling on a larger scale. And then this idea of repair cares, which again I quite liked, this idea of community repair initiatives. If you have experts in your community, say electronics for example, and the community brings all their waste materials to a particular session and then it's all repaired globally. So ideas thinking outside the box. What is the role of policy on all of this? Okay, so without policy change, we're not going to see real change. Okay, so unless there's an incentive, a tax incentive, a policy incentive, a regulatory incentive, we won't see real change in terms of the circular economy. So the Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy is one such, grants funding for green SMEs, tax breaks. And can we use AI? Everything is AI at the moment. So can we use AI to optimize processes for resource efficiency? So where to next in terms of EU-CONEXUS? Okay, so EU-CONEXUS has a ready-built set of collaborators with a ready-built set of expertise, and it's multi-dimensional and cross-functional. So I just chose one of these horizon calls to have a look at, and to just, it's supporting pre-normative research for standardization of the bio-based products. So again, ties directly into what we're talking about here. We're a ready-built network. This is a call in the Horizon Europe. I'm not sure if anyone would be interested in it, but it's an idea of something that we could collaborate through EU-CONEXUS. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. And now the floor is for Juan Requena from Kilometer Zero.
Thank you very much.
I will keep the questions for...
Oh, it's in Spanish. We send it in English. Problemas del directo.
A slight hitch.
Yeah.
They're putting the correct version in English. Juan sent us many days ago. You will see that Juan is the only practitioner, manager in this panel. So essentially what he is going to bring to the panel is how, in the end, the concepts that we try to develop at the universities are understood by the different firms, because Kilometer Zero, as I said, is a foundation, if I am not mistaken.
Yeah, it's
promoted from a firm.
it's a foundation it's by multiple food corporations that all collaborate, and I'm very glad to see that I'm so aligned with what you said. That's one of the key points in regards of circular economy and what we call food waste and food valorization. It's we are very aligned in that expression. So, well, I can't start now, but well, hello all. I'm Juan Requena. I'm Open Innovation Director at Kilometer Zero at KM0 Food Innovation Hub. KM0 Food Innovation Hub, it's a community of, it's a foundation as a social entity, as an entrepreneurial entity, but it's a community of food corporations that believe in that food systems need to be changed to be more sustainable, to be more healthy, to be more resilient, to be more accessible to all humans, and that they start connecting with us for Kilometer Zero to support them in the process of making food systems this way. So I don't know if my slides might be going now.
They're almost here.
Or almost here.
Almost.
As Juan said, it was born from one Valencian food corporation called Familia Martinez, which is a big supplier for Mercadona in the meat space and in the ready-to-eat meal space, but also in the process of creating KM0, different food corporations, like the biggest dairy company in Spain, Central Lechera Asturiana, one of the largest brewery companies in Spain, Mau San Miguel, also some Latin American companies like Grupo Arancia, ingredient company there, and other multinationals joined us for us to support the process in which we, through the integration of technology and through what we call an innovation and entrepreneurs and science, and through what we also call collective intelligence, we try to make this happen. So, thanks. So, but we gotta start. I'm sure most of people in this conference know what the food industry is facing and the food systems are facing at the moment. We feel that there's climate change is real, and probably it's not new for people who are here, but it's new for a lot of people who actually don't believe in it. And this is making pressure in what's from the supply that food corporations need, the food that they need to use, the ingredients. This generates a problem in price and in cost, and also we're going through a more complex world. It's geopolitical wise and technology wise, right? AI has been implemented, and it's affecting everybody's life, and this generates some frenzy in the thought of food corporations, and also there's been some commercial tensions lately with the appearance of Donald Trump at the government, and also the war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East. All of this generates that there's a very complex scenario for food systems. But we are lucky because, as Juan said, we try and think of where there's challenge, there's opportunity, and there's a way that we can make something good happen. And that's how we try and change the food systems. So that's where we see from challenges, we can see opportunities. We can see that AI can be a big challenge for the development of products, but it's also an opportunity to be more efficient and to be not only efficient on an economic level, but also on a sustainability level. We can see that accelerated innovation, more solutions, more science that can be applied into the industry, greater sustainability, not considering sustainability as something that has to be compliant from regulatory perspective, but also as an advantage, a competitive advantage for the food industry. And that's what basically we're doing. We are this community of food corporations. As you can see here, Familia Martinez is one of them, Vicky Foods, Grupo Aranci Industrial, Helados Estiu, Huevos Guillén. And that's like the big logos all around Kilometer Cero. But on the outside, you can see startups, investors, and experts that are supporting us in the integration of this technology. And so, and we wanted to go into more clear detail with more sustainability, because this sustainability is one of the layers we work on. It's very important, it's very relevant. It's the base of Kilometer Cero business case and where it emerged for, but we also grown to integrate other types of technologies and try to solve other types of problems. So this is a bit about our story. We were born in 2018 from Familia Martinez. After that, we needed to join a lot of smart people to support us in changing the food system. We couldn't do it by ourselves. So we started hosting one of the largest food tech summits in Europe called F-Talks Summit. You can see there, down there, one of the keynotes there. We also, gathering all these 150 experts in the food industry, started to generate some collective intelligence that we promoted through report, and that's Futuristic report. And we also had we believe that if we want to make a full change of the food system, we also have to start from education of young consumers. If we want them to eat healthy, we want them to actually know where they are eating products, where they come from, and what's the cost to bring it to the table. And that's where we started doing the Gastrogenius Kids program we still do today. And throughout the years, you can see that the KM0 Squad in 2021, this is the gathering of all of these experts that nourish our community. We can see Sam Cass, which was the culinary chef for Barack Obama during his presidency. We can also see, I'm getting cold now. Well, Howard Safiros is an expert in sustainable systems. We also have Jody Puglisi, who was the founder of the first alternative protein burger by Beyond Meat. He was the creator of that product. He's a researcher at Stanford University. And all of this clarified in 2024 into two initiatives that we do now. The first one is the Open Innovation Initiative, where we try and do the more oriented, and that's the part that I manage, where we try to create projects that actually impact these food industries on an economical level and a sustainability level, that we have KPIs that measure the return of the projects. And then we have the think tank, which is a big gathering that we do in Madrid in February, where we try and bring all of these experts together, and we do some dynamics where they discuss, they comment, and we on the different topics that for us affect the food industry. This is a bit about ourselves. Oh, let me go back. We have 600 startups across our ecosystem, 200 corporate partners, 200 plus that are around us trying to learn from us and learn how we can do this change. We have investors in our network with over 5 billion in assets under management, and we are present in 25 countries as KM0 and KM0 community, people that are with us in our community. And this is the loop that we try to bring to the food industry. It's help them be inspired about what's going to happen long term in the food systems, then understand the strategic insights on what's happening in the market, then connect with the relevant people, scientists, entrepreneurs, experts that can support them in changing this approach to business, and finally, impact and the creation of pilots. Talking about sustainability, we've supported one of our main food corporations. I didn't get the slide. So, for example, Central Lechera Asturiana, Capsa Vida, integrated one of the top tier, not only carbon emission, but also biodiversity solutions to monitor their impact and to improve their efficiency in sustainability and carbon emissions. We also support it by connecting Platos Tradicionales, one of the Familia Martinez companies, with NUCAPS, nanotechnologies. This is more of a health solution, but we're basically been able to reduce on 90% the salt that the Mercadona lasagna has, 90% by using this encapsulation solution. And also Angura Saginaga was able to develop their own plant-based brand through one project that they developed with us. And yes, a bit more about the events. Happy to invite you all here. We have 3 events: FTalks Food Summit in Valencia and in Mexico, and then the think tank in Madrid. Basically, the FTalk is more oriented into the promotion of the innovation that's happening in the food systems, and the think tank is more into the development of what should be the guidelines to change these food systems. And that's it on my side. Thank you very much for listening to me, and happy to.
Thank you, Juan. Now it's time for Pierre Labardine from La Rochelle University. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of us, and thank you for the invitation to present. What I will talk about you is much more in a long-term vision, and a long-term vision implies a view on the future and also a view on the past, and the way we saw resources before. I will just start. Oh no, that's not the good version. Okay. No.
Marta,
It's
anoche
not
envió la
the
última
later.
versión. Yeah, they're going to. En la cafetería, ¿dónde estabas?
Well, maybe you want me
Yeah.
to talk a bit before the.
Yeah, we can start
yes.
with. I'm sorry.
To propose improvisation. Yes, what I want mainly to talk is about the link between the way before where we see coastal resources and the way we only view these coastal resources as a way to make only profits for companies or for countries. And the way we did not understand before that we need to take into account the fact that there's some ecological and social impacts when you see only territories, spaces, coastal spaces, as a financial profit. And no.
I'm going to send them again.
Okay. And in fact, well, I'm working in management science and more working in management history. And the fact that previously most of management tools were linked, very closely linked with only a financial view, not including any impact on social or ecological view. And at the meantime that since the Industrial Revolutions for 200 years, there was a strong development of this management tool, including accounting tool, marketing tools, including only our own pleasure, and there's some consequences on ecological and social view, and we can make some link between the development of these views and of these tools and the decrease in ecological and social.
I think in 1 minute it will be. I don't know. Well, if you want, while they upload the presentation, I can make a question, maybe for Helen or for you too. You can have a concern that although we are aware, I think all the individuals here and in other locations, we are aware of the potential benefits of the circular economy. I guess that there are some reasons why we are resisting to move. We are making as if, for example, when you said, Helen, about different examples of initiatives towards circular economy, you were mentioning consumption goods, but you didn't mention, it's not your fault, but you didn't mention, for example, the car industry. I mean, in some goods where maybe the potential benefits would be higher, industries are not moving. Could you imagine some, I can imagine several reasons, but could you suggest some reasons? Maybe later, because the presentation is already here. But you can go and think about the answer.
I wanted to start with this map. It's a 200 years map of the coastal Africa before French imperialism. And here you can find with the line thickness and the color all the way we see 200 years ago resources of a coastal line. And all the way. For example, in black, you have only the slave and the potential on this space of slave. In yellow, you have gold. If I'm right, in red, you've got camwood, etc. It means at that time, and for 200 years, we have been thinking coastline in Europe, but also you see in Africa, and the way countries or companies see this coastline and only a potential of economic resources to be produced at that time. And there's some consequences on that. It means that today we have in a form of past dependency. What I mean with the idea of past dependency is the fact that you see only the way to think resources as you did it before. You don't change the view and you don't adopt when you are a company this idea not to seeing resources as only an economic way to make some profit, but not including ecological and social social goals. For example, it's the case with marketing tool, accounting tool. Most of them using in companies does not include social or ecological part. There are two ways in that view for me to change our view. The first one is an historical one, is to include our understanding of the role of traditional management tool in consequences on ecological and social crisis. And the second one is the ability, based on the first one, to build a conception of new management tool. For example, yesterday we heard a presentation about participatory budgeting. It's a way to see such consequences. I will show on this view because when you are working there, one of the great consequences of this way of imperialism and colonialism is deforestation, because there's a great number of plantation which appears after with colonization, and there's a great consequence on the level of forest in this place of the world. And what I will show you based on, yes, you've got there with 1,000 years the difference of the land cover from mid 1,000 years, we got 19 after Jesus Christ, up to now, and you see the disappearation progressive of primary forest. It means that, and with a great acceleration after the 18th century, and of course linked with industrial revolution. And why is there such few primary forests? Because mainly in the global south, it means South America, it means Africa, it means southeast of Asia. You've got plenty of primary forests which disappear with the appearance of a new way of producing things like, I will go further, coffee, cocoa, palm oil, mines, woods, fisheries, etc. And if we want to understand this link between this and our way to our way of conception, it's important to think that we built from the 18th century up to now new ways of thinking reality, new way of new management tools, including, that's why I mentioned accounting or marketing, with a great conception, with a great destruction of nature. And it's one of these consequences. You see for the whole world. But in the meantime, for example, in France, if you see the same maps for forest, you see that's not the case. For example, in France, it's also the case with it's also the case in space. You've got more forest at the beginning of the 21st century than you had before. It means the deforestation, for example, if I'm only talking there about the case of deforestation with one resources, the case of forest and wood, that our consumption in one place has no link between the destruction of the forest in the same place. The consequences of our consumption is not on our forest, is on forest elsewhere in the global south, and it is possible with colonization, imperialism, and links between society after decolonizing. If we want to understand it, it's important to see the link between our way of consuming resources and our way of destroying, in my case, forest in other places in the world. I've been working, but we've got plenty of resources on the case of rubber to make, for example, tires for cars or tires for bicycle. And you can prove that there is no calculation at all of the impact of deforestation except the cost. No impact of the ecological or social cost of deforestation to build plantation of rubber and the consumption. And it's the second causes, for example, of deforestation on places where there were huge primary forests in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Sri Lanka. And at the same time, with our management tools, there was no visibility at all in Western countries at the same time. At the same time, we've got the car culture, which begins with the image of the car of freedom. And it means, if you want to have, at the beginning of the 20th century, a car culture, you don't see at all there's some consequences on deforestation in other parts of the world. What I did there, what we are doing with some colleagues, you can do the same with plenty of resources, including plenty of coastal resources, coffee, cocoa, palm oil, plenty of mines, which depends for our industry, woods, of course, fisheries. So my proposal for this long-term vision and the ability to build an economic growth scalability is to do two ways of working on the history and the link between this management tool and the impact, especially on the environment. And the other one is a proposal of new management tools based on this history, proposing not to have the same impact on ecology and the social. Well, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. And our last presenter, Pablo Fernández from the Polytechnic University of Valencia. He's already connected online. Thank you, Pablo, for solving technical obstacles and being here to participate in the panel.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks to you, indeed, because for the quick reaction to my technical problems, a broken car, which is blocked me in the rural world. I'm speaking to you from Algar de Palencia in the Palencia River Valley, between two natural parks, and it's a pleasure being here. Thanks to the previous panelists in the presentation, very interesting presentation. I've just shared can you see my screen? Okay, so thanks to Juan and to Marta for having invited me. I asked very early Juan whether soil health would be a good topic because it's very based on ecological and soil science, and the case studies are not, two of them at least are not really in the coast, but are Mediterranean cases. So, but I think from what I hear from the other panelists that these cases could be a good input to this panel. So I'm presenting very preliminarily the initial steps of this project, Governance for All. I work as a researcher at Ingenio, which is a joint institute between CSIC, the Spanish Research Council, and the Polytechnic University of Valencia. And we got into this project as leading the development of the governance models of living labs. I will explain the context of the living labs, soil health living labs. And our role in the project is to promote a system view of problems related to soil health and how living labs could be tools or entities, organizations that could help transform and increase soil health through new governance and business models. So, as you might know, soil is a very important ecosystem that are providing key function and services to other organisms, to biodiversity and humans, from water purifications to nutrient cycling, habitat for organisms, flood regulation, and this could be a hot topic now in Valencia due to the last dana last year. Where we could see that soil somehow failed to protect coastal communities because of the compaction and the urbanization in certain areas. Foundations for human infrastructure, so provider of land resources. And the problem is that at the European Union level, at least, soil are being degraded based on recent evidence. These are the main impacts: erosion, loss of organic carbon, compaction, contamination, biodiversity decline. So this has become, at the European Union level and at global level, a central concern for policymakers, scientists, land managers, and farmers, increasingly farmers. The European Union response to achieve soil health by 2030 with key milestones, and overall by 2015 is to increase soil health, to reduce soil degradation, and achieve more sustainable outcomes through several instruments: the soil strategy, soil monitoring law, and the soil mission. The three different, these are the three key legs of the soil policy for the European Union, with different goals and different purposes. So we can enter the debate from many points of views. One, maybe for this panel, one of the main entry points is that soil health is closely linked to primary productivity in agricultural systems. So healthier soils, the implication that healthier soils support higher yields and ecosystem resilience, which is very important to keep on these higher yields across time. And the economic cost of soil degradation is very uncertain, but is currently estimated between these two figures, which is very high. And there are additional costs likely when considering the additional impacts, because it's a systemic threat. So soil degradation has broader impacts over, as Juan said, also over human health and biodiversity loss, which could create like exponential impacts into the future. The challenges are fragmented legislation. As in many resources, as in many environmental problems, there are fragmented legislation and institutions, knowledge, lack of knowledge, uncertainty on how could we revert the situation, barriers to sustainable solutions at many levels, the lack of harmonized knowledge systems to understand how we are making or not change, and the stakeholder engagement. So the engagement mainly of local stakeholders on the implementation of and the development of new policies considering the local context. So this project came into the scene to try to connect solution seekers with solution providers and test solutions in 5 Mediterranean living labs in Spain, France, and Greece, so the Mediterranean regions. We have just started in June last year, and our focus is very much bottom-up approaches to co-design, test, and validate regenerative soil practices alongside quadruple helix actors, so society, policymakers, researchers, and NGOs, so the third sector. alongside, very important, is the connection between governance models and the business plan. So how do they interface, considering that governance for soil and for ecosystems is not just a single value, it's a plural value, because ecosystems are not just an economic, provide not just economic resources, they provide other kind of services. So this project aligns with the Mission Soil's goal of creating 500 living labs to accelerate the adoption of tailored soil health solutions in actual landscapes. These are where we work. We have the Altiplano Estepario in the southeast Spain. We have Menorca Island. We have the Val d'Udron in France, in the south of France. And we have the two Greek cases in Lesbos Island. So it's representing the Aegean territory, and Tyrea, which is continental Greece in the south, in the southeast, south to Athens. So the initial of the project was kind of a bit of a frustration because we entered the project with a researcher in mind, with this framework where we explore the role of living labs, what is the governance model for the living labs. As you know, in political science, we have these three kind of archetypes. We have the market governance models, we have the hierarchies, so the role of the government top down, and the networks, which are more diffuse. The governance is more in a societal context to create social functions centered on steering the human groups at the more from the bottom. But how these networks are related to markets and the state. So we had this kind of this framework to start with them, but we soon realized that this was not important. So because they are so focused, the local stakeholders, on creating the governance model, that they don't care yet about how they relate to these kind of archetypes. So we kind of diminish the conceptual content of the project and focus on, okay, what you are creating are a network of local stakeholders through the living lab process, and how is your governance model at present, and how should we transform your governance model into the future, considering how you relate to the markets, to the governments, to different policy levels. And how do you consider soils? So we are continuously asking and continually structuring how we ask them how they consider the soil. Do you consider the soil as a private good, like you consider land? Or do you consider soil as a common resource, like freshwater, fish, timber, as Pierre was saying before, a resource? This is also part of our framework. So this is very quickly, we are now in the process of developing the governance model as a network. And one of the goals of the project is to have a baseline, a governance baseline, so that they can measure in the future, maybe not in the scope of the project, but beyond the project, how governance is changing depending on feedbacks from the impacts that we are creating, from the feedbacks that we receive from soil health, not the land, but what is below the land. So the soil ecosystem, which is very complex, composed of many interrelationships among the microbiome. So it's kind of the relationship between two networks, the human network and the biome network of the soil, which is one of the innovations of the project. So I cannot tell you more. We are just starting to do this. So the main question is the governance model at multiple levels learning. So because they don't have models, what we are doing now very quickly is to prototype the governance model, focusing on key decision-making processes that they have to undertake at a strategic and operational level. And the different living labs are at different stages. For example, the southeast case of Spain, they are creating a landscape partnership. Menorca is creating an alliance with different structure. Tyrea, the Greek, one of the Greek living labs, are focusing more on what is their prototypical governance model. They are still thinking about it, but they have the idea that they have a hive mind consulting with different kinds of experts and decision makers to make the most precise decisions they can. And Solviterra, one of the more complex case studies we have, they are still thinking whether to form a new legal entity, which is also a question for the living labs or not, because they have a deep history. History is very important for all the living labs. So what is their role in a region which is very crowded by other organizations working with the same goals? So the question is, are we more a new legal entity, or are we a living lab to help coordinating all the actors for achieving the common vision for soil health? So very quickly, I invite you to ask us questions if you are interested more in this project, of how we making progress. But we can already have different preliminary conclusions based on a combination of our experience as experts in other cases and this case. Governance, solid conditions, the capacity to mobilize stakeholders, we all know that, to coordinate across scales because of this fragmentation across policy and institutions, and align with soil health ecosystem dynamics, which is a very complex and uncertain issue. The early mapping exercises that we are doing reveal these fragmented decision-making landscapes where responsibilities are distributed, very distributed, without a clear coordination mechanism with actors, which is a classical problem for governance. No single archetype governance model fits the complexity of this kind of organizations, but they start as a network. What they will become, we still don't know. We have to combine this with knowledge about their impact on soil ecosystems. The prototyping process that we are doing is very effective for governance innovation, acting as a mini governance experiment, which is giving us a lot of insight on how do they operate now and how can we help them to improve their governance. The cross-living lab comparisons will be, of course, very helpful to inform to upscaling and to inform higher level policy due to the different contexts of the living labs. And now, as we see that common partners are now emerging, there is a central coordinating partner, and there's still a flexible stakeholder engagement that has to crystallize and make more transparent and robust governance models, and something that you can measure and observe how it is performing in the future. And a key issue is that just the innovation process to create new governance models is a transformation pathway in itself, due to the negotiation, the capacity building, and the institutional creativity that all the stakeholders combined are putting into the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Fernandez. Thank you, Pablo. Now it's time for some questions. I will start if you have questions. Oh, yeah, there are questions in the public, so I will save mine for the future.
Hello, good morning. I'm Alex Neff here from Valencia. I have a question for Pierre. The map you were showing us, I mean, the first one from Western Africa, I mean, for me was the most interesting part. I saw here these 3 days, a fascinating map. Map is information, so my question is, the map, you said it's around 200 years old. Mm. Do you have an idea who gained access to this map? I mean, governments whatsoever, any markets, which stakeholders had this information? It's a lot of information in this map. The information is very valuable, but was it more or less distributed, or was it just shared among 3 or 4 libraries and in monasteries, and nobody saw this map? So then the information would be relative. Many thanks.
Okay, we are working on this map. This map dates back from the 19th century. It was a public map. It means that was done by the French Marine in order to place. If you saw the map, there's a little flag with countries, but as it's it's very little, and the goal was to see where for each country to go, and to put before colonization a fortified place for each countries, and to link fortified place to guarantee some commerce for each country, and all what was recommended for French state was done then. And that's why it's really a fascinating map at that time. It was also the period where there was no word calculation. calculation with figures, but you wrote plenty of statistic card where you got this kind of information.
And it was mainly shared among military.
Yes. In fact, there's some link between military, and in France it was called Chamber of Commerce, which was a meeting of commerçants. And this is a link between some great coastal cities, mainly Marseille in France. We finance with the state, with the agreement of the state. So there's an agreement between a Chamber of Commerce and on the other side the state.
Thank you. More questions in the public? Well, in this case, it's my time to start. Yeah? Oh, yeah. I'll wait.
I guess a broader type question maybe. So obviously we're in the session on sustainable economic models, and we're talking about climate change and sustainability and so on. And on one hand, you've got corporations. Basically, my question, I suppose, about economic growth versus sustainability, and how can we bring the two along? Or is that possible, or what's the best route to do that, I suppose, based on not probably maybe a simple answer, but yeah.
I can take that.
Yeah.
So as we see it, sustainability is the biggest opportunity probably since the internet. Well, now it's AI there, but you can create a competitive advantage as a corporation, as a business, if you start thinking in terms of sustainability and you go from the short term and going just to the next quarter, your EPS, into integrating. And we've seen that. We've seen food corporations such as Capsa, Central Lechera Asturiana, or Familia Martinez, once they start thinking on carbon emissions, on when are their supplies coming from sustainability standpoint, potentially it's a risk supply that you're getting. If, for example, in Valencia, we have Dana. Now we started thinking about geographical diversification of our business. Also, we start thinking about water. What's the hydric impact, and measuring the water that we're using in our processes. If we know that water is going to be a resource that's not going to be so available in the future, and we start being more efficient in the usage of water, that we are very confident that gives us more insight into the market, and it gives us also a marketing proposition and being more competitive. We're actually lowering our costs through thinking in sustainability terms.
I think there's a fundamental shift there in people's thinking. I think people are starting on that process. They want to be more environmentally friendly, they want to be more sustainable, they want to be looking at protecting the future, but they only want to do that where it doesn't cost them anything to do it. So it kind of goes back to your question you asked that I didn't answer earlier on, Johan. So in terms of the car as an example you had, so all that technology is there, but people haven't really embraced that technology because, first of all, it was very expensive. Now it's come down recently because there's new technology coming to replace it. And the second thing was you had to be organised with an electric car. You couldn't just drive off into the country and stop whenever you wanted because you'd run out of battery and you'd stop along the way. So the technology hadn't quite kept up with what was already available in normal fuel cars. So people, although they thought the idea was nice, they thought, well, if it costs me more money and it's more inconvenient, I'm not going to go for it. So it's a matter of convincing people, I suppose, that it isn't all about what it costs and it isn't all about convenience. Somewhat the policies has to change, the tax incentives. So say food, for example, reducing the amount of sugar and salt. If there was a positive tax incentive for companies to do that, then people would move towards more healthy options in their food choices, maybe. Yeah. So I think we're at the start of a revolutionary shift in thinking, but we have a long way to go to make that happen.
Yeah, but my opinion, if I can intervene, in my opinion, circular economy is also about allowing the inclusion of kids in previously built products. For example, in the case of the cars, you have a traditional car, and you can partially substitute some components to make it more sustainable. But then you have a problem. I don't remember if you were, Pablo was mentioning legal obstacles. Then you have legal obstacles for the government to recognize this novelty in the car. So there are some conflicts that maybe are not evident, but that impede or put difficulties. One is this, and the other that I was thinking, and I will ask you if any one of you want to answer, is that, innovation is disruptive. So every innovation makes partially obsolete previous innovation. So there is, and maybe this question is for Juan, there is a tension because the innovator wants to control the rhythm of the innovation. And sometimes this makes to bias towards a particular kind of products and towards, I don't know, what I would like to highlight is that we need more self-awareness of the difficulty and to understand what is the main idea of the circular economy, and not only say, well, I'm going to greenwash for a while. Yeah. I don't know if you have any...
No, I mean, going back to her point, I feel that for the last 20 years, it felt from an economic standpoint that if you want to be sustainable, you have to pay more. It's not price competitive, not being sustainable. So you mentioned about we need to make tax incentives in order for food industries to reduce sugar and salt in their products. But what we're seeing is that through innovation, we've been able to reduce sugar and salt in some products, maintaining flavor through this encapsulation technology in the case of new caps. And we are also seeing that some food industries that are getting into sustainability thinking further than just I want to comply with regulatory policies. I want to actually understand this because we live in an environment, I mean, this might be absurd to say, but understanding all the different changes that this environment is going to have and how this is going to affect my business processes, if I'm able to understand that, I'm going to be more smart, therefore more competitive. So that's why so this has been like a big shift in my mind the last year, because for the 4 years that I was previously working at Kilometro Zero, it was more of like sustainability is going to be a bit more expensive because it takes more cost, but it's like the correct option from an ethical standpoint. But now we're starting to see that through all the different layers of technology that are getting into the food systems, and I can only speak about this sector in particular, we're actually being more competitive in price. We're more efficient.
That idea precisely you mentioned was, I think it was the last book of C.K. Prahalat, the strategy at the bottom of the pyramid. I mean, how to avoid unnecessary attributes to make a product, a sustainable product, affordable for, he was Indian, he was born in India, and he was trying to make products affordable for everybody. And yeah, the idea was to avoid these unnecessary things or to reduce, unhealthy items by more sustainable things. But the problem is that sometimes consumers pursue sort of exclusivity. I mean, and this is putting in compromise those strategies. So self-awareness or awareness of the importance of sustainability is not about paying more, it's about paying less in the future. I mean, it's a sort of a temporal trade-off. Yeah, but I agree with what you said. Okay. I don't know if you have more questions. I think we have time, yes. You mentioned, Pierre, that history matters. And well, you said, you used another word, but history matters was the expression that Paul Krugman employed for the same thing, for this path dependency. And do you think that maybe when we anticipate that technology is gonna bring us easier, sustainable products, we say, well, it's gonna be cheaper, so we become more sustainable in our preferences? Or so do you think that our preferences determine the rhythm of innovation, or the rhythm of innovation can influence the society? What do you think?
In the future.
Yeah, we were talking about the future.
Yeah, I'm not sure in the future about technology. I don't think technology. No. In fact, I'm not sure that technology will change so much about the conception, the view of the conception. I'm not mainly. I'm not working on it, but I'm not sure it will change or it will dismiss the cost.
Okay. And for this is an open question for the one you prefer. How do you see Europe in this context of, we pretend, I would say, to be more sustainable than others, but it seems we are a bit losing some races. I don't know, how do you see Europe as a cluster for the future? What's your opinion?
Well, that's kind of a hard
Europe
question.
is very big, so it contains a lot of countries.
Europe should be leading the way. Okay, we have the big investment from things like Horizon Europe and previously Horizon 2020, and they're major investments in research and innovation. And we should be realising the benefits from those investments in terms of that self-same innovation. And sustainability comes into all of that in the modern era. So there is hardly a project in Horizon Europe, for example, that doesn't have a sustainability aspect to it. So I guess we should be leading the way. We may not always lead the way because we may not always get to the end point that we envisaged in the first place in terms of our innovation. But I think things are changing. I hope things are changing. And it will be pushed by people. So it can be pushed by us in terms of the research projects we do, but that's not enough. It needs to be pushed from the consumer, as you were saying, maybe kids, and use at the same point, Joanne, just build it in and get that ethos change and that kind of a different way of people thinking, so that it's pushed from what the consumer wants. And my point on policy change was, if you take something like the pharmaceutical industry, for example, of which I'm heavily involved with in Ireland, the pharmaceutical industry is so highly regulated that all they care about is the regulations, okay? So the product meeting that. So where that becomes the centre of focus, then change isn't going to happen very fast, okay? So we need to look at what will drive change. Policy will drive change. Another very simple example is, we used to use an awful lot of plastic bags in our grocery shopping. I presume that's a European-wide level. And that really changed when it had to change, when you had to pay for them. Okay, so I know that you don't like the costly model all the time, but that produced a very fundamental change. So I'm not saying that cost has to be the change. What I'm saying is that something has to be the driver of change, and Europe should be the driver of change. We're investing enough money in it.
We must.
Yeah, we must. Yeah, it probably wasn't a great answer, a roundabout, circular answer, but yeah.
Thank you, Helen. I have also a question for Pablo. It was a curiosity when you mentioned that your presentation was relying on a living lab focused on 5, I think it was 2 locations in Spain, 2 in Greece maybe, and 1 in France. Sometimes I tend to think that we tend to think on commonalities, on common elements, and what were the main difference that you would highlight when analyzing the 5 living labs? I mean, for the different countries. So some exotic or idiosyncratic issues that you would mention.
Well, that's not an easy question. That's complex, but I would kind of start maybe from the historical factor that you have mentioned. History matters, and history matters in different ways. You have the inertia of the history, the path dependency, things that you cannot change easily or at a low cost, at all levels, resources, policy, political trade-offs. And you have the very events, so the very events linked to the cultural context, political interventions in situ or relationship with other countries. That's a difficult question, but I would focus on how history has conditioned the current governance models that each living lab has. And in Greece, for example, they are very, very much conditioned by the 2008 crisis because they still don't have stability in the legal context. That was a lesson, took me 1 year to understand why we're so reticent of forming an association, for example, a legal entity to govern their living lab. And they didn't want to do that. And then in one of the last meetings, workshop, they were very clear that the legal tax and so the fiscal landscape was changing so fast that they wanted to remain flexible. And this has a very resilient aspect in their behavior. They want to be flexible, to be resilient, or to absorb the changes in the political landscape, in the policy landscape. And for example, for the Spanish case, they already have a legal entity, they already have an association and a foundation, because maybe the recovery process in Spain was different. So they felt confident on forming a foundations to canalize the funding. So, but the culture is the same. It's a Mediterranean culture. They don't want things to be imposed top down. They are reticent of researchers, policymakers, and experts coming from the outside and imposing the governance model. And this includes me and the team from Ingenio. We soon very much realized that because we are experts in transdisciplinary processes. So then we started asking questions about what do you want to develop? And in France, it's very much different. So the history is that they have 4 decades on implementing organic agriculture in the region. They are one of the regions higher in organic production in France, 25% versus I think 5% for the rest of the country. And so the institutional landscape was very rich. And so the discussion, when we have discussions, they don't get blocked. They just have many ideas that comes from this rich history and culture of creating organic agricultural enterprises and institutions. So you have this common cultural identity of not being, rejecting being imposed a governance model. At the same time, they have different cultural and historical processes that limit or create new opportunities to develop their governance models. So I think history is a perfect example, and also culture.
Thank you, Pablo. I don't know if there are more questions. Well, just to conclude, if you don't have any other...
I think there's one.
Yeah? Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
One more. So my question goes to Pierre again, and I thought this sounds easy, like a management tool, and then we just add like not just profit but also social impact and environment, and we all agree and we're done. But like, who does this? Like, who proposes the tool? Who adopts it? Like, what would be the actors that would make this possible?
The main issues, there's a part of legal conflict, including in Europe with the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainable and Reporting Directive. Maybe some of you know about this directive, and now we are going back with the directive Omnibus because of the vote on 2024. There was, for example, in this case, some rules on ESG impact, the way of measuring, and we are going back because you've got a huge comments on medias explaining why it's so complicated to get, etc. And we are going back. So this is part of a democratic fight to impose to companies to include this social and environmental measure. And maybe just to add something on the question you ask, it's not only a question of preserving our environment, it's also, in my view, a way of preserving Europe. Because when I mentioned, for example, the map, plenty of our resources came from other parts of the world. We are not in the time where we have an empire, we are able to have these resources. And it's really important to preserve, to keep some resources and to consume less if we want to keep a European sovereignty.
Thank you, Pierre. There is another question, maybe the last, I don't know.
There's one last question that I wanted to ask. I don't know, maybe some of you could answer it. Is it that, do you think that making soils more productive and improving also soil quality will encourage companies to produce more in Europe again, or to buy more from farmers in Europe and offer local products to consumers? Will this reduce production costs without negatively affect farmers and consumers' pockets? And also, can some kind of legislation be promoted to encourage the supply of local products?
I answer first the last time.
It is a very complex question. In my opinion, well, it is also my final idea. I mean, sustainability is about the future. But in the present, we have our own problems, maybe due to the past, as Pablo was saying. The problem is that although sustainability is an imperative, every regulation, every decision, every current decision involves a different distribution of the burden of the cost. And this is important. Maybe it's going to affect positively the cost of producing in the next future. But the problem is that in the present, some farmers perceive that they are paying too much compared to what they will receive. And well, we need, I guess, that we need more awareness of that we belong to the same scenario, and what we are doing is going to be good for us and for the individuals that will continue with our project in the future. I don't know if this is the answer you were...
I suppose part of sustainability is your carbon footprint, okay, in terms of producing products that in Europe, that remain in Europe, rather than importing necessarily or exporting. So I guess there could be, would it be an idea to have your carbon footprint on your packaging? Okay, so that people can make sustainable choices in terms of that sort of aspect if they know about it. Hard to know, would people do that? But I think as time goes on and maybe education goes on and knowledge goes on, that maybe informed choices would be easier to do. You know, like palm oil and all of those products, you know, they're now being informed choices. You're told that that's in your product. And you can make the choice then to buy or not to buy. So, I don't know.
And there is another idea, I think Pierre mentioned, that we are balancing sustainability together with security. Because sometimes to be sustainable requires, or I don't know if you mentioned too, requires to import products from the rest of the world, and we are not sure if we will be able to do that. Although the price seems to be cheaper, we are not sure about the willingness of the producer to sell us in a couple of semesters. So there are a lot of balloons to balance at the same time. Well, I think it's time to complete this session. Thank you very much to all the panelists. I think you have given us well the best of your research for we all to be aware that there are different perspectives to see a common problem, a common issue. And well, I hope this is not the end. We will continue discussing in the future with different positions and different disciplines that you represent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.